Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Mike Malatesta. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to get to the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to expose the ideas and clues you need to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. Hey, everybody. So happy to have you here. And as you know, my podcast is powered by Winject Studios. Today, I've got an amazing success story for you. I've got André Brisson with me. André, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, it's so we met through a strategic coach connection, and we had a little call together, and I was like, all right, yeah, let's get on, and because the world needs to know more about André. So let me tell you a little bit about him to get started, and then we are off to the races. So André has a special ability to simplify complexities and solve difficult problems. Like most entrepreneurs, he started multiple companies, the first two of which failed for various reasons that we'll probably get into. Learning from those failures, André now operates three very successful companies, including a self-managing entrepreneurial engineering firm specializing in niche markets that require unique training, experience, and impulsive instinct to try new things. During his lifetime, he has maintained a hyper-focused interest in personal growth and strength identification, studying intensely to increase his knowledge and discover ways to apply these concepts to his team. Recently, André was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, severe ADHD, and later Asperger's syndrome. While his undiagnosed ADHD created challenges, it was also the key to his success. Since discovering how to turn his ADHD into a strength, people have sought him out for help using their ADHD as a strength to drive success. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to explore that. You can find André at his website, which is andreb.ca. So it's ANDREB.ca. He's on the socials as André Brisson, Brisson. And you can check out his podcast, the Impulsive Thinker podcast, which is also the URL, theimpulsivethinker.com. And you can probably get anywhere where you can get podcasts. So, André, I start every show with a simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
How did it happen to work for myself, you mean?
You can answer it however you want, man.
How did it happen?
How did it happen to do that? How did it happen to be a chaos navigator? How did it happen to be all the things that you are?
Well, to me, like when you asked that question for me, how did it happen was, how did I start my entrepreneurial career journey? And that was when the job I was at, my only full-time professional job ever, and last, it became a toxic place, and they didn't want to grow. They were happy where they were. We brought it from a company of 50,000 revenue to over $1 million in a few years. I developed their fabrication shops. It was a niche entrepreneurial firm, but once they got to that level, that's where they wanted to stay, and they were hampering my growth. And I decided to leave and go on my own because I couldn't find what I know now is actually I needed to create an environment that could support me and accept me. As later on, I found out with my ADHD, it made it a tricky workplace. But ultimately, being stagnant and being happy where they were wasn't enough to me. I need to keep learning. I need to keep trying something new. I need to keep trying challenging new things. And that was being hampered. So I went to my wife, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, and our house that we just renovated and blew our savings, and said, I had enough. I'm going to try it on my own. And I had 8 pages of arguments from her and counter arguments ready for a conversation. And she just looked at me and said, it's about time. Dinner's ready. And that was it. And we ran off.
Huh. So that's fun. That's interesting. So you had put a lot of thought into what she might say and your response to what she might say.
Yeah.
And then she didn't say anything except
I just
Let's
stood
do
there
it.
going, I just had all this prepared and I don't have to use it. Like, come on.
I'm not ready for dinner. I've got all these things we have to talk about first.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
that had
but
to be
apparently I've been talking about it a lot for a while without realizing it either. But I think it came down to just not being allowed to grow and not satisfying my need to expand. I think it was my personal growth and my personal understanding is probably
okay.
what it was in the end.
And when you were describing that experience, you used the word toxic, and I wondered if you might help me understand better what was toxic about the environment. I get the stagnation, I get the, sort of comfortable where they
Yeah.
are, but
Well, it was, it's kind of like two opposite ends of the spectrum here where I wanted to push them to grow, and they wouldn't want to. So I'd actually try extra hard. We had a whole team that was happy where they were, and there's a bit of politics. Get to a certain size, there's internal politics. I was being used a lot, and I was gaslit a lot, and so that just made the whole. And everyone was on eggshells, walking on eggshells around me, around the owner, my boss. And at the time, I was a partner, and I brought in a third person so that when the original owner retired, I would have a partner to keep going on. And just it didn't matter what we tried to do, me and this other partner, it just was always bad. It was not fun to get to work. Everyone was on edge. Everyone was on top of each other. And I just looked at it as if I can remove this person, would it change? Nope. Put them back in. I went all around the staff, and I was the last one to be picked. He says, if I remove myself, then the place will be a better place. So that's when I started realizing that they were stagnant. They liked where they were. And me not realizing at the time that it was undiagnosed ADHD that was actually taken over. My symptoms, sorry. And my emotional dysregulation would just spew over, would just take over control, impulsivity, go out of control. So that created an uncomfortable environment, which turned into a toxic, and it was just best that I left. And the whole company still as is, as they are with the same people, and they're happy. So
do you think that they couldn't understand you? Is that like,
oh, that's an understatement.
okay.
Yeah. They couldn't understand my drive and my intensity. Once I bit onto something and I was really interested and I was challenged, I went down, head down, ass up, just go. I was a force to be reckoned with. And if I wanted to pursue a certain thing, if I wanted to learn, I'd hyper focus on it and go, go, go. And then if things weren't going well as planned, that would also kind of frustrate me. And but yeah, the intensity and the drive is what they did not understand. And they actually thought for a while that I was very greedy. I just wanted more money, but I never correlated advancement. Like I saw revenue more as a measurement of a tool of growth versus being greedy to get money, because I always ended up investing it back into something else. But yeah, it was grossly misunderstood. And I'm not criticizing them. I didn't give them something fair to judge, like to try and figure out, because I didn't know myself at the time.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking through like experiences in my life when you run into a person like you and you don't have an understanding of what's driving you, you automatically sort of measure a person like you against a person like me. And it's like, well, I don't have those, I'm not like that. So why is this person? And it can be challenging for the person on the other end too, to figure it out. Like, I guess it's easy to just go to like, there's something wrong with that person, as opposed to how do we get the best out of working with a person like this?
Right. And then we're talking about 20 some years ago too.
Yeah.
So that was not a normal thing to think about. Is, there's a normal way of doing things. There's a normal way to react to things. And there's a normal way the books tell you should be doing things. And I never did any of those.
Yeah.
It never worked for me. So like the other thing too, that really throws people off, especially my engineering world, is people can be staring at a problem for months, for days. And then I go in there and 15 minutes later, I see the solution. I see what the problem is that everyone seems to be missing. Like to me, it's glaringly there. And maybe my sarcastic tone and my moods back then would just be very bluntly say, this is, why can you guys see it? Like to me, it's so easy to see, but a lot of people can't see it. So my neurodivergent brain that goes all over the place all the time, I seem to be able to put things together that doesn't make sense to most people.
Hmm.
But what I need is neuroconvergent brains that can take all these things and then get us on one path rather than 200.
So
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I actually want to get so divergent and convergent. That was, I like the way you put that together. So I think before I get to that though, I want to get back to your wife here. So you have these 8 pages ready. You talk to her and she's like, I don't want your 8 pages. I just want you to do what you want to do, right? Make yourself happy and do. How did you mentioned you had the house, you had no redid the house, you didn't have savings. What did you do to get off the ground and started?
Well, I got my buy into the company. I got back, and I put that into furniture and just start going after customers, existing customers, and then just getting referrals. I was able to slowly build it up and gain work. But it was very, she had my back. She had a lot of faith it was doable. But at the same time, too, I always had at that time, I said, when I turned 65, I wanted to be able to look back at that and say, at least I tried if I failed, not say what if. But then I did it and I never looked back. But yeah, I was tenacious. I was just keep working with people. People kept coming to me. And the thing is, a lot of times I get I don't know how to solve this. This is nothing. No engineers can figure it out. And before they finish, I say, yep, let's work on it. Let's try this. Let's try that. And then meeting other people through connections is how I got it built up. And the one thing I did decide was I wanted to build this on referral, this engineering firm, because I wanted a solid foundation. I knew it was going to be a slow grow, but I'm going to have a solid foundation behind me because I want long-term relationships. I want to work with the right people. And I could have done a bunch of marketing and do commodity type work, which I do a lot of niche, hard thinking stuff. And, if I went commodity, it could be gone one day. And then I actually started Jade Engineers, my first engineering company. It was just another damn engineer. That's what the acronym was for. Mm-hmm. I started in 2007, and 6 months later, the recession hit. Right. So I could have buckled. I knew I can get a job anywhere, whenever I wanted. I know I still can today. I had always that faith that if that bombs, I know I can get work. So when the recession hit, I could have easily backed out. I could have saved some money, but I just said, you know what? If I can get through this, I think I can get through anything after that. Mm-hmm. And then, COVID hit, and I think that experience helped me navigate this with my team. We've had a lot of ups and downs, but it's definitely a skill I got when I started Jade.
And in the bio, you mentioned, or I read, that your first 2 companies didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So what was going on there? Help us understand your journey through those.
Well, with Jade Engineers, I dealt with a lot of the hydro trucks, what people that work on the power lines. We call them hydro up in Canada. Sorry, you guys call them hydro, the power lines. So the arms that bring up the worker to the power lines to do work.
Yeah. Okay.
So mobile cranes, a lot of that kind of work. Then a manufacturer of one of these types of equipment approached me and one of my expertise, and then we kind of created a new company. And we worked with that. They wanted me to do certain things. And they gave me a whole list of things that hasn't been working. So it was more on the service side on the equipment, because I've got a lot of experience working with that equipment, inspecting, modifying, taking apart, and inspecting. And they gave me a whole list of having issues with their service shop and department. And they've been working at it for 5, 8, 10 years, they said. And then we went in there, we merged my engineering company and their service all under me. And I solved all the issues in 6 months. They weren't happy. And they didn't, again, it was one of those things of misunderstanding, not understanding me, being gaslit again a lot. And I got caught in internal politics, and I just can't deal with that. And I just had to close it. I had to separate from them. I said, no more. So that company had to close. They took it over, and then I lost my engineering company because of that, because they took that with it. I had to leave it completely.
So they were connected.
Yeah. So yeah, so technically the two companies were partners into this third one. And then when I left the third one, my first engineering went with it.
And when was it that your ADHD was first diagnosed? What was the reason that you wanted to investigate that?
I call it my life tempest. So what happened with Jane Engineers, it got self-managing, which is a goal we all want. It was very successful. We're doing a lot of stuff, but I didn't realize that I was getting bored because there's nothing new to solve. In the startup phase, there's always something going on, and my ADHD brain's on, it's on fire. It keeps focus and all that. But once it goes a nice, we're coasting, there's not a lot of problems to solve. The brain got bored, and I started to create fires to put out. I was creating problems with staff. I was causing, and this is all subconscious. This is not consciously. So I was starting to have a lot of issues, losing good staff, losing good customers. And then when this opportunity came by, new opportunity, new challenge, sure, I needed a change. Let's do this. Even though my gut was saying this is not a good idea. So I went ahead with it. That got into a bad, I just explained the story. It was a very bad scenario. It was not fun from day one. Then the ADHD symptoms started to own me, take over. And so ADHD it's inattention, symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Those are the official symptoms, but we also there's a lot of research going on this, and it's being more supported unofficially, but it's also an executive functioning deficit disorder. So executive functioning is the part of the brain that helps you not deal with the day, but to do day to day, how to prioritize, set tasks, work in memory, how to organize and execute tasks. And then the other big one is emotional dysregulation, is that the ADHD brain feels emotions intensely as compared to the neurotypical or to everyone else. It could be anyways from 100 to 1,000,000 times. So we feel it intensely, immediately, and then it goes away. But we don't have the filter. Like the prefrontal cortex is our filter to say, hey, time out. Should we react to this or not? Everyone accuses me of having no filter. And it's like, you're right, I don't.
Yeah.
My impulsivity just goes through. My prefrontal cortex is not fully formed. So those reactions come out immediately. And then you're judged as being oversensitive, temper tantrums. And if those are taken over you, the inattentiveness, the impulsivity, which for me is a really big one, I'm very impulsive, and your hyperactivity, which I also am, which is rare for adults to be hyperactive, not only mentally, but physically, that took over, and it was no longer me. Being short-tempered with everyone, even at home, was really, really bad. So I'm very thankful, grateful. I could have lost my family because that definitely was not pleasant for a good 3-4 years. And I just remember that no matter what happened, things would set me off. It was no matter what was small or big. It was just, I knew it wasn't me that was that was going on. And I just remember one night, something happened. I knew it was menial, but I started screaming at my kids, at my 2 girls, and they just gave me this look. And that scared the crap out of me, because that look is the look I'm sure I gave to my parents when something wasn't going right. And that scared me. So that's when I started to go in the process of getting, something's wrong, I need to get help. And I got referred to a psychiatrist. I actually went to disprove it was ADHD because it has to be something more severe.
That was that's what was in your mind. Like,
that was my mindset. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, I can't be a good person and just have this condition that kind of throws it off a bit. There's something worse wrong with me. And that has a lot to do with the negative energy I've had for 40 years, and then forcing myself to play a character that it's not me so I can fit in.
I was thinking, as you were saying before you started mentioning your family, that there had to have been, um, like your wife had to have recognized that there was something unique about you, and not just in your own relationship, but in the relationships you were having with other people and your
Yeah.
business partnerships and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got the diagnosis, you said you went in with the sort of objective of disproving it. When you got it, what did you think?
Um, I really questioned, make sure he was making the right call. Because to me, it was just too simple of a solution to make sense of my whole 4 years life then, right? It couldn't be just this one little thing that just put everything in perspective. It's just kind of everything flashed back to me, just like boom, 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 all these scenarios going, oh, I get it, I get it, I get it. So at first, no matter what kind of diagnosis you get, be it physical or mental health, there's always a denial stage. So I followed the whole grieving process to denial. I fought it. By fighting it, I researched it a lot. And then finally just came to accept that it is ADHD. And I don't know about you, but I think my generation seemed to be able to think that you were raised that any condition you have can be cured with a pill or whatever, just be cured. But it's like with my type 2 diabetes, I think I'm really happy I got diagnosed with diabetes a year before the ADHD, because with the diabetes, I realized I have it. There's nothing I can do. But I can manage it. I learned that I can manage it. And if I can manage it to a point that's not hurting me, I control it. And I lost 70 pounds. All my numbers are really good. And I'm just one pill a day. So then with that, I saw with the ADHD, I can't get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with it. I just need to manage it in this world that's not wired for my brain. Like, to me, that was the biggest thing. My brain is just wired differently than everyone else. So I'm wired differently for ADHD. I'm wired differently for Asperger's. And then also right now I'm researching is my daughter's gifted, my wife's gifted, the gifted adult also has a different wiring. So just understanding how the brain is wired and how we can work with it, we can make it work elsewhere.
So let me poke into a couple of things there. That the type 2 diabetes, that's something that interestingly you can't deny, right? You get diagnosed with that and you can't deny it. So you said you'd had that about a year before, and since you couldn't deny it, you accepted that you would have to manage it and then ultimately control it, right? And you talked about some of the things you did. How have you learned to manage and control your ADHD and harness its power, I guess, but minimize its, whatever challenges it brings along with it? Right.
So, like, the one thing I've been really, like, a lot of research into strengths, identifying my strengths and everyone's strengths. And I have observed that if you overuse a strength or underuse it, it actually becomes a weakness. So I
overuse or underuse.
Or underuse. So I'm like saying, okay, so if you don't manage your strengths, then they become your weaknesses. Like, for one, me, I'm a learner. I'm a big learner. I love to learn, just the process of learning. So I can get really caught down a rabbit hole on learning something new and not move forward on something because I just want to learn too much. Or if I don't learn enough, then it causes me grief or challenges also. I don't know if that's a good enough example to understand that. Or like, I know, like, my engineering manager here, like, for the Clifton strengths, one of his, my wife is too, harmony is one of their top strengths. So if they're trying to over harmonize, then at times for business, they give too much away because they just want everyone to get along. Or if they under harmonize, then they get stepped on.
Oh, and that's a good example of how it can be a strength if overused or underused.
Yes, correct.
You just got to moderate. Okay.
And if they get right in the happy middle, then their strength is used for good and everyone gets harmonious for the right reasons. So I took that mantra and I kind of said, well, if those 5 years my ADHD symptoms were unmanaged and allowed to free flow, then we just have to learn how to manage that so that they can be strengths as they are. Because impulsivity is really good for me on a job site because I can impulsively check and see and just look around. I'm always scanning. And then the odd question just impulsively come out without thinking or self-checking, gets the right questions out. Um, and that's a strength. But if it goes too long or too far, if I get frustrated or if I'm bored, my impulsivity actually, my mouth starts running off for entertainment, but not for everyone else's benefit, just for mine.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. So what I actually really did is I just worked on the triggers and identifying when conditions are, I get inattentive or identifying stuff I don't like to do. But a lot of what I figured out with time was if we, as an entrepreneur, if we could just stay in our unique ability and just do what we do best, then the ADHD is the primal strength. We can hyper focus. We don't need to focus because we're doing stuff that we love. So as long as we can structure our boundaries and barriers, we can structure our environment to support the ADHD and only do what you do best, then it's no longer a challenge. And that's what I did a long time ago with Jade Engineers. I didn't realize I started creating standard operating procedures, SOPs. I thought it was for everyone else, but it was like I wasn't getting the information. The projects weren't going in a certain way they should. So I started to structure them because they're all follow through people. But actually what I started to do is actually create an ADHD safe environment with procedures so that I would not be surprised or something came out of left field from behind me as a surprise at the last minute. So if we start,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. A non-surprise process.
Yeah.
Don't tell Andre at the last minute that something is not where it should be.
Well,
tell me.
Exactly. Like this one thing I tell him, I said, I have to communicate is when I'm running out the door, at the end of the day, I'm already late. That's not the time to ask, do you have a minute?
Okay. So I want to, you use the word manage to, with your type 2 diabetes. And earlier you said self-managing company. And I think there's a lot of people who may never have heard that term and don't know what that means. You used it as a sort of prelude to say that you were getting bored. Tell what is a self-managing company?
Well, a self-managing company is your company is a position at a stage where you actually can take time off, and the company doesn't need you for a period of time, and your team can continue the work, they can receive the work, execute the work, and they don't need a lot of your attention. So you've grown your company to a fair size. You've got a lot of work coming in on its own without really needing it, but it's not self-multiplying. So the company is good to just manage itself where it's at and to maintain that momentum.
Okay. So in other words, would it be fair to say that at that point it's high performing, or would you say high performing meaning that's like sort of the goal of a business, particularly an entrepreneurial business, is you get it to a point where it doesn't need you all the time, or am I seeing it wrong or different?
No, for some entrepreneurs, that is a goal, that it doesn't need me. I've always had that mantra, that mindset, but not everyone likes that. Some entrepreneurs like to have the control and the authority at all times, and they don't want to give that up to their staff. So it depends on who the entrepreneur is. But for me, it was ultimately when I learned that concept from Strategic Coach, that's a goal I wanted to get to because I wanted to take time off. I didn't want to make all the decisions in day to day because I'm just not a manager of people. I got no patience for it, and I learned that way too late in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
How did? Okay, so you get this diagnosis and you accept it at some point, and now I'm wondering, how have you mentioned the standard operating procedures, but you mentioned strength finders and some other things. I'm wondering how when you meet people or bring them into your organization or work with them in a collaborative process or whatever, how do you both get on the same page? What's your strategy for that so that people understand how you work and you can understand how they work? Because I imagine that it's a challenge.
Oh
Or
yeah,
it can be a challenge.
yeah. For staff, we use the Colby as part of the interview process.
Okay.
When they come on the team, we do a strengths finder, so we can identify their top 5 strengths that we try to get to that point where we can just delegate to those strengths. And then we got a big thing about the communication, how we like to be communicated to, and all those Colby strengths and the communication tools. We talk about it all the time, and how it's 99% of the time it's a communication problem, and how can we fix it for the next time. And at the interview process, Mike, I just openly tell them how I work, how I am, because I don't want them to find out 6 months later, this is not a person they want to work with. You're going to find out right now at this interview if you want to work for us. And kind of my personality, the way I deal with things comes out during the interview, because I just don't like having that surprise to say, this is not who I realized I was working with, or like people will put an act in an interview, and I don't want those acts. So I'm genuine. This is how I am. And if you don't like it, well, then don't decide to come work for us.
And you've mentioned strategic coach a couple of times, and how was, but for people who don't know what strategic coach is, it's an entrepreneurial coaching program that I've been in myself. I was in for 6 or 7 years and got it. It was very transformational for me. But I wonder for you, when you first got into it, how were you received in that space, and what's been really helpful for you to be in a program like that?
Well, first of all, what I liked about strategic coach is there's no corporate people. You need to own a company, and you had to be a certain success level. So it wasn't people were not startups that were in there. So everyone's had their skin in the game. They're all and it was nice to be around a room where I didn't have to justify my ambition or the reason I went into business. We're all there. So everyone just knew it. I call it my entrepreneurial's anonymous group. Like it's group therapy almost. We meet quarterly, like-minded people. I'm in a small community, so there's not a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs in the area. There's a lot of hobbyists. They just have these side gigs or side hustles, or they don't quite understand our ambition for growth. But definitely support, to be able to be in the same room with the people that understand you from that side of the fence is very supporting. And then the ideas we can generate, I can be having this problem now, Mike, and then Mike, you say, oh, I've had that problem a few years ago, and this is how I resolved it. And then I can now take it and apply it to my situation, and a lot of idea sharing. So it's very powerful. You can find a group like that.
Okay, good. And this talent that you have for solving complex problems quickly, you've mentioned it a couple of times. You've given us a couple of examples today. It's like, to me, it's like the guy, you sound like the guy who can solve the Rubik's Cube in like 10 seconds or something. It's like, what keeps you interested? If you have this sort of ability, what keeps you interested?
Well, the thing is, that's the challenge. It has to be interesting. For the ADHD brain to want to focus, it's got to be interesting, challenging, novel, or urgent. That's why a lot of times we'll delay stuff until it's last minute. So now there's an urgency, and now I can get the terms, the stress hormone to start adrenaline to start pumping, which gives me more dopamine for my brain to stay motivated. So now, I did that for about 20 years of my career. Always keeping things urgent, last minute, over scheduled, go, wake up in the morning, book 15 hours of work a day in an 8-hour day, that kind of stuff, just to keep the brain firing. So that's the challenge. It's got to be challenging, unique, novel, and urgent. And that's kind of the challenge. And that's why now I've restructured how I'm doing work and where I'm doing work and with who. So I'm a good problem solver. I've always been the bottleneck in projects. So I just got everyone else doing the projects and they come to me when they need to get unstuck. Or if there's a common problem, and I got customers now call me unique problem, come on down, solve it. A lot of times I'm really good at figuring out where there's a mess, how to reorganize the mess so everyone can keep working. Expert witnessing is another one that's fun. But right now, the other interest I've got that's keeping me interested is, what I went through and what I saw out there for podcasts or even content or other coaching services. They weren't really real. They're just throwing the science at you and hope it works. And since I can take this complex information and simplify it, I just simplified it down to it's a brain thing, executive functioning, some emotional dysregulation. But if you just structure your environment first, then work on your ADHD strengths, how to manage those symptoms, and then identify your non-ADHD strengths. I created kind of an ADHD transformation journey program that I can help others. That's why I started the podcast, just to have real conversations. I have my 13-year-old daughter on there talking about that period, the life tempest period, where she said it was not fun to have you around and why. And we had a nice conversation, real conversations, bringing on other ADHD entrepreneurs that are successful. We still have our challenges, but it still can be done.
Tell me more. Tell me more about how you walk people through the journey. How do people become aware of you, and what do you get out of it?
I'm actually searching for, I'm building a community I could not find, community of ADHD entrepreneurs, high achieving, because the high achieving ADHD person is successful and they're not seen as having ADHD or as it's a big problem. So it's a side of ADHD that's kind of neglected, ignored, because there's a lot of people with ADHD that have a lot of problems. They can't set goals, they can't achieve them. They've got a lot of problems. Now, I was always told you're too smart to have ADHD. I'm still told that. You're too successful to have ADHD, and people still tell me that, but that's not true. It comes with its own set of challenges people aren't very aware of. And there's a lot of us, especially in the professional realm, there's a lot of people that have ADHD and they're silently suffering. Because like for me to organize an 8-hour day, it's about an hour and a half just to be on top of it. And then throughout the day, just keeping on top, like just how the organizational system that's normally accepted does not work for our brains. And to be able to stay on top of stuff, our working memory is very short compared to everyone. So try to keep something in our mind. If we don't write it down, we can't keep track of things and we lose stuff. We don't know, we got messes. And if it's not visible, it's out of sight, out of mind. Impulsively saying yes to multiple projects, new ideas. So, and we can get into overwhelm very quickly. So the first thing I realized was it's a brain thing. So if we just understand how the brain works and how the brain kind of makes you stumble, then we kind of work out the triggers on how to minimize these symptoms and then create an environment, especially boundaries and barriers is a very key one. So we don't want rigidity, but we like structure. Our brain likes structure, and if it goes as planned, it's perfect. If there's a bunch of changes that you didn't plan, the brain goes haywire. But just raising awareness about it is very key, because if you're aware, like I had this the other day where my day 15 minutes into the day, I knew it was going nowhere the way I planned. So I had to, now that I'm aware what I could become, person I don't want to be, I now try to put in some protection steps to minimize any further emotional dysregulation or executive function issues, and just kind of sit down and say, take a breath. It's not going to go as planned. It is what it is, and to move on. And to have those systems in place as protection is very key to any success and to gain more success. So after we figure out the brain, then we'll delve, because I find, like, to me, that's the That's your foundation. If you can fix that foundation, then the next step is getting into the ADHD strengths. Because you got that foundation, we've kind of controlled the environment. Then we can concentrate on the symptoms a little more in depth. Kind of like what I call in your mapping your ADHD, getting a true understanding of your ADHD, because my ADHD is not the same as someone else's. Like the saying goes, if you saw one person with ADHD, you saw one person with that ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's very unique then.
It's very unique, and it's on a spectrum, right? And we got, we have, like, mine is hyperactive. We got the inattentive ADHD, which is more internal daydreamers, hard to focus, hard to stay organized. And then you got the combined. So we hone down, identify your ADHD, because I'm tired of giving solutions or getting solutions that just kind of like, this is a process, hope it works for you. So I want to work to understand your ADHD, and I have a skill to really learn about someone and what they're really good at, figure that out, put more systems and boundaries around those symptoms so that they can become your strengths. That makes sense.
Yeah. And and do you mentioned the divergent and convergent before. Do you, both in your own life and in these people that you work with, do you sort of bring convergence into their lives, to like intentional convergence, so that when things maybe aren't going the way that you plan, you have someone who organizes that for you so that you can move on to something else that doesn't bog you down on that? Or
right. And then in the third stage is identify your non-ADHD strengths. So that's I bring in the strengths fire, Colby, print, and we just got a way to identify what you like to do, what you don't like to do, and then identify that, then hire for all the stuff you don't like to do. So to build a team around you, so that the environment's also the team.
Got it.
And then once we can get all those in place, stay in there, then they kind of graduate into, I don't like the term, but it'd be kind of like a mastermind concept, but it'd be, we're all ADHD in the room, we're all entrepreneurs. And the next step is, see, the thing is, our interests always change. So the systems we have now, we're going to get bored with, or as we grow, whatever reason, business-wise, personal-wise, we have to change our system to adapt to the new person. And so it's kind of like a never-ending story. But as a group, as we grow together, we can bring a little more of the emotional stuff. The personality stuff is a big one. Then we can help change things as we go. And it's just like coach. If you can come in the room, the same people with the same brain, and then talk about the struggles, then we can together in a group setting help each other out to grow. And like, to be in a room to say, I don't have to justify or explain my symptoms to anyone, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Because and another demonstrative reason why your environment for success is not in a corporation or something where everyone's sort of like, we can't deal with someone like this,
No, not to say that
or we don't want to.
Yeah, not like some ADHD brains do like corporate jobs because it is structured.
Yeah. Okay.
But the entrepreneurial even the entrepreneurial person is not a corporate person either, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Aspergers that you have as well, is that common for people with ADHD to also have some spectrum of Asperger's, or is that unique to you?
No, Asperger's, which is on the autism scale. So technically we can't call it Asperger's, but it's the autism spectrum disorder. But I don't know, it doesn't bother me, but it just seems it's a high functioning autism, and that affects the social interaction aspect of it. But no, it is true that there's a lot of Asperger's or high functioning autism with ADHD. So there are comorbidities. It's common, but not uncommon.
Okay.
But that layers its own sense of complexities also with social interactions. You know, it's a lot of times you say if you ask me exactly how I feel, I'll tell you exactly how I feel. Doesn't matter what social convention says. It's just, like I saw this joke earlier from on an autism group. That says, if you want to find out over the next 2 hours how an autistic person feels, then you ask them because they'll tell you
in detail.
Yeah, in detail.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's what you asked. Right. And it's a lot more of a literal. I think I'm finding where I take things very literally. I'm really good with words, so I take it literally what you say, not necessarily the nuances of it.
Okay. And what about medication? Is medication a part of the management of this, or have you managed it without? Okay.
Management is part of the treatment. Education is number one. Medication is part of it, and just self-awareness. And that's basically the whole kit and caboodle. They also say pills don't build skills. So the pills the medication is there to kind of help you maintain your focus, or depending on the ADHD or what you're trying to work on. Like for me, it was a lot of mood stuff. But I've tried medication. It doesn't seem to work as well for me as others. So right now I'm doing it without medication, which has its challenges, but that's why it's a lot more important to have the right team and structure around you. And that you just stick to doing what you like to do. Because like one thing I realized a few months ago was I really get really pissy if I'm doing a lot of jobs that I don't like to do or tasks. And I don't want people to bug me or talk to me because I know I'm going to be very, very belligerent, or could be belligerent or testy around people because I'm doing stuff I don't like.
Yeah.
So I try to minimize that, or right now I'm getting rid of them. So that's an example of awareness, which I think it's a skill most people can't do, or you need someone to help you kind of make you aware of it.
And that's so funny because I'm sort of the opposite, because I get pissy too when I'm doing things I don't want to do, but I'll sort of mask it. I'll be sort of like, I'm just going to deal with this and
your prefrontal cortex is working.
So fun. Well, Andre, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your journey. It's been so inspiring for me to talk to you because, one, I don't get an opportunity to talk to someone who's been through the journey you've been through and had all the success that you've had by really at first it was by not being even aware. And then second, it was because of your awareness, really being able to address it. Yeah. And then getting yourself around these other people who don't care they're just there to support you, which I think is something that more and more people need to do, regardless of what you may or may not have. Get around people who support you and aren't trying to drag you down every day or make their problem your problem or whatever the case may be, so that you can focus on being the very best version of yourself that you are, and focus on your strengths and maximizing your strengths, not turning them into weaknesses, as you said.
Yeah. And I'm doing that for my kids. I'm hopefully helped out with other people too. Just, since I was a kid, I always fought for the right to be unique. Why can't I just be me? And why do I have to be like everyone else? And then now it made sense why I was unique.
Right.
So, but the challenge now is my whole life I've been fighting a current, and that gave me motivation. But now with this diagnosis and being aware, I no longer have a current fighting against. So that's something new.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell to do. What do you mean have an easy life? What are you talking about?
Right.
It's all brand new again. So it's all trying to figure out to make sure that it's me, Andre, that's wanting to do this, not the old character that was built to fit in or to look like to fit in. And I really became this character, and I believed that me to be me. So, and a lot of us struggle with that. still.
So that's really interesting, because your ability to recognize and manage has also created it's kind of made that person an avatar of who you are now. And now it's just like, okay, well, who am I now again?
Yeah.
Right. It's a discovery process once again.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not easy. And that's the thing. So with my program, we all know we got to a certain success. We overcame our own symptoms, but there's still a few things that are missing to just make everything clear.
Got it.
And I know I've got the gift and the talent to help you figure that out with the program, and just want to work with people who are smart, who are open to honest conversation and deep thinking and deep self-awareness. I can talk about that all day, every day till I die.
I mentioned some ways to connect with you at the beginning. Are there other ways that you want people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can go to tacticalbts.com, which is Tactical Breakthroughs, which is the company for the ADHD transformation journey.
Oh.
But if there's anything that hits you or that resonated with you, please send me an email at andre@andreb.ca, or you can reach out at tacticalbts.com, tacticalbts.com, for more information on the program, or to reach out to me.
Perfect. Andre, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Mike. I'm really big on spreading awareness for adult ADHD, especially in the entrepreneurial world. And the more we talk about it, the better it is for other people to be self-aware. And I know it's been about 2 years I've been doing this seriously, and I know 7 have gotten a diagnosis. And because of my podcast, 1 person started their own. So the more we talk about it, the more we get it out there. People understand each other.
Okay. André Brisson, check him out. Thank you.
Thank you.